Welcome to The View from the Summit, conversations with the world's top trainers, handlers, and athletes in the equestrian and canine sports. Brought to you by Summit Animal Health. Hello, everyone. Welcome to View from the Summit. My name is Steve Searcy, and I have the pleasure of introducing my co-host, Robin Benson. Robin has, my goodness, where do I begin? She's been a 3-day eventer in her young life, and she's also now rides barrels and ropes and lives on a working cattle farm where she is in the saddle all the time and doing crazy stuff. Welcome, Robin.
Thanks, Steve. It's always fun to be here. It's super exciting today. Saddle, no saddle animals. We're just like, all the animals all the time. And I'm really excited to get to visit with Bridgett today, because when we talk, everyone says I do extreme stuff. I live in northwestern Minnesota, and Bridgett takes extreme even way beyond what we do. And I'll let her share with you where she's from.
Hey, I am Bridgett Watkins, and I'm so thankful to be on this podcast because I have learned to love this company and this group of people, and now I'm getting to chat with them and kind of tell you my story. So I'm super excited. But I live up here in the interior of Alaska. We live just outside of the big city of Fairbanks, which isn't big at all, but we live in a really small community that's in the middle of nowhere, honestly, in the wilderness in Alaska. So that is where I reside.
And
Awesome.
who resides with you there in both four-legged and two-legged?
In the middle of nowhere. You're not alone.
So yeah, you get terribly lonely in Alaska if you're by yourself, right? So no, I'm fortunate enough. I have a wonderful family. I have a husband. I have 2 very, very active boys that are growing, and they're into sports and all the things that keep them super busy, and moving from baseball to hockey to basketball and fishing when we have time or whatever it might be. And them along with my husband, we also have a dog or 2. Which is why I think you have me on here. So,
Or do you have to take your shoes off to count?
Yeah. So I think, most people have some pet dogs. So we definitely have pet dogs. But what makes us a little more unique is we share our living space here on Kennel on a Hill. We have 27 racing sled dogs. And so we are constantly growing and moving and maneuvering with them.
And feeding them and going on poop patrol and all that kind of stuff, right?
Oh yeah, that never ends. It's the gifts that always continue to give. Every day there's more poop. The more I feed them, the more they poop. So it's like, well, I want them to eat and stay healthy, but at the same time, it's a lot more work for me to actually take care of them. So it's a never-ending cycle.
So you have that many dogs because you are a competitive musher. Is that correct?
I am. Yeah, I am an Iditarod finisher, which is a 1,000-mile race. And I am a competitive long distance and mid distance racer where I race Alaskan sled dogs. So, that's where back in the days, people used their only mode of transportation because honestly, even to this day, snow machines or 4-wheelers are not reliable. And in this country and in this environment, you really have to have something that's dependable. And at the end of the day, the only thing that is going to be dependable is that dog team you have. And so people used to move everything from mail to freight to lumber, anything they needed to build anything. That's actually how everything was transported. And so that, of course, turned to sport. And unfortunately, some of the motorized vehicles have definitely taken over what used to be our common way of moving about. But, we still have a love for the dogs and the passion and what they were truly just bred and born to do. So we're lucky enough to take them on all those adventures and go crazy places with them and the stories that never end.
So you go on a 1,000-mile race. There's the starting line and there's the ending line. So you just drive the dogs and it's just over the snow and then you're done, right?
Oh yeah, we just hit cruise control, and I just lay back and I'm like, you've got it from here. Let me know when we make it to the other end. It's definitely you.
It's a little bit different than that, right?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. It's kind of extreme sports to the.
And as you're discussing the actual race, for people listening because we have a lot of horse people on here, horse people always usually have dogs, and there's a lot of dog people listening. animal lovers, but just share a little bit about an Alaskan sled dog. I grew up with a Siberian Husky, but she wasn't a racing dog. So can you just share a little bit about what is a, modern day Alaskan racing dog? Like, what do you look for? Why are these dogs so effective and good at what they do?
Yeah, so just like I guess in the horse world, you have a thoroughbred or you have a Clydesdale, right? So in the mushing world, we have Siberians, which are what everybody's more familiar with. The really pretty curly-tailed furry dogs that everybody sees in movies, and they're like, oh, they're so pretty. That's the Clydesdale. That's like a working dog that is honestly really slow, super into their job, which is pulling heavy things, freight, things like that. But they're not honestly made for 1,000-mile races and to travel long distances. It's shorter distances. They used to use those type of dogs to check trap lines. And so they would go from one trap line to another trap line and go with that type of dog. Now, if you think more of the thoroughbred horse or our Alaskan sled dog, it's honestly a dog that's been bred down through the years, and it is a racier type dog. So think more of like a greyhound on that end. So they move faster, they're more efficient. But what they have that maybe a greyhound dog doesn't have is they have the ability to adapt their bodies over a long period of time, where they are able to use the energy that they have, whether they take it in or what's stored, to be able to travel for long distance at a slower pace. And so we're not going super fast like a greyhound. Our long distance dogs, they're usually averaging around between 8 and 10 miles an hour. And so we're going 8, 10, 12 miles an hour if you're going really fast. For days on end, and they can maintain that. And so what makes them very interesting is their body metabolism and how much they metabolize and the fuel that it takes to really keep them going. When they're racing, they use over 10,000 calories a day. So that's an incredible amount of consumption, which we already discussed what happens when we consume a lot, right? So in the winter, I'm giving them a whole lot of calories, everything from different types of beef to different types of chicken skins and turkey skins and fat. And there's a whole feeding program to get a dog to be at its best physical fitness. Just like a human, you don't have a marathon runner that isn't fueling their body for the job at hand. We have to do the exact same things for these type of athletes that we raise.
Is there dog food special racing dog food that you feed them, Bridgett, or something?
So everybody has a commercial pet food that they can go and find at the local store. These dogs, like I said, are requiring so many calories. There are some specialty companies out there that really do target these working dogs. And so we're fortunate enough, we've partnered with some great partners such as First Mate, who actually, when we look at how much we feed a dog, it's actually how many kcals they have per cup. And so, your average non-working dog probably doesn't need but like a 350 kcal per cup, if that. Our dogs are getting 600 plus per cup of food that they're getting. But that's not the only food we feed them. Like I said, a significant portion of their food is a raw diet, because that's really what they are bred to digest and eat and metabolize. And that's what they really need to get them down the trail. So food is one of the most important things that we actually do. And what we feed our dogs and how we feed them is a very important program.
So just like what we had another podcast episode where we're talking to an equine professional who is a performer, and it takes him 8 to 10 hours a day just to feed, groom, prepare, clothe, just to go for like a 2 to 3 minute performance. So before we even talk about, like, yours is 1,000 miles for the long races and some of the mid distance, right? But they're shorter. But just before we even get there, how much of your day do you spend preparing, getting ready, feeding? This is a lot of, or your kids, it's a great lesson for the kids, right? Like, how much do they or you spend, how much time feeding your dogs, preparing the food? And I know it's summer right now, whatever season you're listening in, it might be different, but do you spend extra time in the summer? I know you've been fishing some. And so how much that's a lot of time just to feed them, let alone train and everything else.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It is a lifestyle, not just a passion. So your family and your closest circle around you have to be completely committed, because it really is the way you live. And it's, at the end of the day, the dogs have to eat, and they do eat before we do. And so if they're going to be fueled, you have to treat them like the athlete that they are. And so Our mornings always start with feeding our dogs, and you have to feed them on a certain schedule to make sure that they're not eating too close to when they're running. Just like a human, you don't want to eat a big meal right before you eat, but you got to have the right calories in you. And so it's all timing depending on what we're doing and how far we're running that day. The thing that takes the most time, honestly, is preparing what we call our snacks. And so our dogs have to eat while they're running. And I know that seems very strange, but about every 2 hours, we find that their blood sugar actually starts to drop a little bit and they need more fuel. So about every 2 hours, give or take, when we're running, depending on what we're doing, we stop and we give them a snack. And so what a snack consists of is something about the size of, maybe think of a Snickers bar. And so the size of a Snickers bar, and it's a piece of meat of some sort, whatever that meat is, whether it be fish, whether it be turkey, whether it be chicken, whether it be beef, whatever it is. And these are raw foods. These are uncooked foods, which a normal dog, and I will say, do not feed this to your normal pet dog, because these dogs can actually metabolize food differently. So this would hurt most pet dogs, but these dogs, their metabolism is very different. And so they consume these calories throughout the day while we're running, which means we have to prepare that food. So this summer, we live in the beautiful state of Alaska, where we have abundance of salmon. And so these salmon feed not only the humans, but it also feeds our athletes. And so what we have to do is we have to prepare that. All that food is frozen and kept frozen in multiple coolers and freezers that we have on property. And then we have to prepare it. And so we have to cut each one of those pieces into slivers about this big, and then they have to be packaged. So we package those per team. So on a team, we're usually running about 10, 12, 14 dogs. So we will cut every one of these things up. We'll make a Ziploc bag, basically, of 14 snacks. So every time we stop, there's snacks available for them. So we have to do that for not only every training run, but then we have to have that all prepared for the race. We cut and prepare over 3,000 pounds of meat every year just to have ready for them. And so we just finished with fishing season, but it gets a little tricky because I can't cut meat in the summer. If I'm trying to cut meat outside, I don't have a freezer that I'm cutting in. It would all thaw and get really nasty. So some of these things that you would like to be able to prepare for the winter, you just simply can't. So we have to wait until it freezes outside, till the snow falls, before we can actually get our saws out, and we actually cut with band saws and we start slicing all this meat. And so that's almost someone's job every single day, the entire season, is to keep meat cut coming.
Wow, that's incredible. You don't have like community meat snack making parties, and we're gonna
have well, and that's you had asked me just about the food. That has nothing to do with the amount of time or preparation that it actually takes when we're going to be training and running, and depending on our conditions and what the dogs have to be prepared to wear. So they wear everything from, they have jackets and they have coats and they have different booties that they put on their feet, and they have leggings, and they have all this gear just like any sport athlete would. And so it depends on what the conditions are that day of what you have to actually prepare. And unlike most horse events, not all, but most horse events that are over relatively quickly, we're out there when we're training 8, 10, 12 hours a day. So that's not anything or any time commitment that has to do with feeding. That's the actual training of the race. And so as the season progresses, usually between December and February, I'm outside or on the trail for half the day.
That's amazing. So you are not just a full-time competitive extreme long distance musher who takes care of all these dogs and all the food and all of the things they wear and you wear and keep yourself fit. You also have another job, right?
Yeah. I'm a registered nurse. I've been an ER nurse for the last 20 years. And so I do work as a nurse, just part-time now, fortunately enough that I'm not having to work full-time. So I still do have to drive, and we live a long ways from town, and so our commute is rather significant that we have to drive both ways. And so I'm basically out of commission for the kennel those 2 days that I'm working. And so the support that I have around the kennel and the people that I have surrounding myself with is very important, or this show wouldn't go on.
Give us an exciting example of something that happened when you were on the trail, the Iditarod Trail last March.
Yeah, I think it's just the sheer beauty. So I think people see the and are allured to Alaska's great wilderness. And honestly, that's just so hard to find nowadays. Even if you live in Alaska, everything is very commercialized and there's a road almost everywhere. And honestly, you have cell phone service like everywhere. So that, that lost, allure of Alaska is really gone almost because we've commercialized it so much. But, Iditarod has not, because when you are out there, there is no cell phone service, there are no roads, and there are certainly no people. And so you are truly in the great outdoors, in the wilderness, in the most beautiful creation that God has placed on this earth for us to witness. And it's very raw and not very many people get to see it. And so that's really my favorite thing about mushing is it's the only time I can truly disconnect from everything in the world. And there is nothing else that matters at those moments other than those dogs that are in front of me and the journey that we're on together. And so some of the most beautiful moments are sharing those times with them out there and going through the Alaska range with the most massive peaks and snow and valleys that we're going through. And we're honestly crossing rivers and creeks, and sometimes they're not all frozen. And so you have multiple adventures, but getting to see the northern lights overhead where they're dancing and they're going along with us along the trail through these moonlit peaks is just incredible. And so it's things that you really only can read about or watch a movie about, but until you're actually experiencing it, there's nothing like it. And so those are the moments that I live for, the reason I love to be out there, and the ones that draw us back, year after year after years, because there's going to be another adventure, there's going to be something that I haven't seen that's going to be amazing. And so the moments are unfortunately too short, but they're enjoyed, every single one of them.
Well, the way you speak of it, Bridgett, everybody's going to want to go out and create a kennel and have a bunch of dogs. That's
good luck. Let me know how it goes.
So with your dogs, I know you use the Summit product. Can you tell us about that? I mean, what happened?
Yeah. So keeping dogs healthy is always our number one priority. So just like any athlete, if you get injured, you're out, right? And then it takes time to recover. And then you have to build back up the stamina and you have to get back in shape and you have to go through rehab. It's no different with our canine athletes. And so that is always our biggest challenge of the year, is to keep dogs healthy and keep them on the trail, because that's where we need them. But if they get injured, then they're out. So I was fortunate enough to be brought into this company and learn about these products and then actually try them out. And I won't lie, I was 100% skeptical at first, because I was like, I don't know about this. I just, I have to see the proof. I'm truly blown away at the results that I had specifically this last year. And so I did my own little trial where I had a group of dogs that were getting our Summit products. And so we gave them to them. They had their starting doses. And then we gave it to them weekly throughout the entire preseason, and then throughout the entire season, throughout our 1,000-mile race. And then after, and they're continuing to get it. And then I had a group of selected dogs who are younger dogs who you think of as like, your younger athletes that are supposed to stay healthy and not get injured and not have to have any time off. So I chose to leave a few of these dogs out of my own personal trial study. What I found very quickly I don't even remember, was it October? Let's see. It was probably about January, if I remember right, Steve, that I called and I was like, I have to share this with you. Like, you're not going to believe this, but we're like 3/4 of the way through the season, and I have no injured dogs that are currently taking Summit. And the dogs that have not been on Summit have all had some sort of injury. I said, I can't explain that. There is no way that I can explain that, because I've been racing sled dogs my entire life. And we always have so many injuries, and that's what you're battling. But I just didn't have the injuries this year. And so I was blown away, and I was like, man, this is going to be a game changer for Iditarod. And, it was, because keeping a dog team healthy for 1,000 miles is very, very difficult. There is no words to describe the challenge of keeping everyone healthy and eating and uninjured. So I gave Summit throughout my entire Iditarod. One of the dogs that was not getting it, and was part of my trial to not get it at the beginning, she was one of the dogs that got an injury, and I ended up having to return back home. to recover back at home. And so it just again showed throughout my entire progression of the whole season, like how it benefited me so much and how we continue to give it now. And we're seeing year-round benefits. And so we're just continuing the process. We were thinking, oh, we're going to see what it's like if we just give it during the season or however. No, now it's just year-round. So it's just a year-round cycle that we just don't stop. And so the dogs love it. And it's so easy to give because we just take it out there and we just eat one of two things. In the winter, it's a little bit more tricky because in Alaska, you got to figure it out, but they just squirt it in their mouth. They know what's coming and they don't mind it at all. And so it makes it really easy for us. We're preparing a lot more dogs. I'm giving it to 20 something dogs at a time. So I have to make sure that my bottles don't freeze, my liquid doesn't freeze, but I've got all that figured out. So, but I couldn't be happier. And it's really helped with our ability to keep dogs healthy and on the trail.
That's really terrific. And there was someone else that was taking a Summit product called Pure C4S Daily, I believe. We know anybody like that?
Yeah. So as an athlete, I've had a few injuries, a lot of injuries, actually, to be exact. My very first Iditarod 2 years ago now, had a pretty significant injury and storm event that occurred and broke my collarbone, kind of tore out my shoulder and my rotator cuff, and had some pretty big shoulder injuries. I was very determined to not have shoulder surgery. I'd had so many previous orthopedic injuries that I'd had to have surgically repaired. And I said, you know what? We're going to try something different. And we did. So I rehabbed like I always have. I kept myself in shape, ate healthy like I always have. Those are the things I always do. But for some reason, I still usually end up having to have surgery. The only thing different that I did this time is I really added in my Pure C4S and took it regularly and took it every single day. And I don't miss a day. It literally goes everywhere with me. And I haven't missed it. And I haven't had surgery. And I have recovered. And
it works. It works.
I love it.
It does.
So if you're listening and curious, Pure C4S, it's the exact same molecule. It's the same stuff as the dogs get, as the Summit. It just doesn't taste like rotten chicken. It's in a capsule. All of the extreme athletes we see have gone through trials, right? You go through challenges, and it's not just the time it takes to prepare the food. And I mean, the preparation and training itself is extreme. But when you hit a snag or a roadblock or an injury or something happens, give us a little context. And then how do you stay so strong mentally to keep going? Because at the end of the day, it's your grit to go with your dogs and get through that amazing endurance feat.
Yeah. So mental toughness, most things in life, this is no different than anything that we have to deal with in everyday life. But mental toughness is everything. And so preparing your mind and how you're going to deal with those things before they happen, I think are key. Because no matter where you are in life or what your story is, you're going to get somewhere that you're going to have to figure crap out. And it's going to be hard and you're not going to want to do it. And it's going to be terrible. And unless you have that plan already in your mind of how you're going to deal with that and you practice that routine, when it happens, you're not going to be prepared. And that's what will break people. So I had a very unfortunate event a few years ago where I was on one of my final training runs, less than a month away from the start of Iditarod, that I had been working years and years and years, honestly, my whole life to get to. And we were finally doing it. My dreams were coming true. And I encountered a very angry moose who then proceeded to attack us. And he trampled my team for over an hour, where he ultimately ended up injuring multiple dogs. And one dog actually died and succumbed to his injuries. It was one of the most horrific events I'd ever been part of or witnessed in my life, had significant amount of post-traumatic stress from it. And I would not say that I'm over it by any means at this day, but I work on it, and I work on how I deal with those emotions to this day, because, harder times have come since then and will continue to come. But the things that I used to get through that is what I still get through life with now. So the number one thing I had to learn very quickly is I had to make a decision for myself. Was this something that I wanted, and was I going to go for it? And how was I going to do that? You have to make your mind up, and then you have to move. You can't just think about it. You have to decide, okay, this was terrible. This should not have happened, and it did. And now I have to decide where I'm going to go with what I've been handed in the cards that have been placed in front of me. And so when I decided we're going to run Iditarod. We're still going to do this. Then I had to decide how I was going to make that happen. I then had to face my fears. Fears have to be faced so much in this sport because this sport's not easy. It's terrifying. It's death defying. And you have to make a decision that you're going to get out there in the worst circumstances, in the unknown, and you're going to make it happen regardless. And so one of the things that I honestly practice and that I think about a lot, and I've read a lot on books, is Mel Robbins has a great book that talks about her principles of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And so at the end of the day, once you've made your mind up, this is what you're going to do, you move forward with it. And no matter how bad you don't want to do it, you're going to count down and say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you're going to take a step. It might be a crawl, but you're going to move forward in that direction to get you back to that step, because that's what you have to do, because you have to keep going. If you stop, you're gonna just be stuck. And that's just not acceptable in my life. And so with dog mushing, it's happened over and over and over again. I've been encountered with many things that bring about fear and anxiety and unknowns and stressful situations. And I'm like, I don't even know if I can do this, down to me laying on the side of the trail with my dog team taking a nap when we're resting and it's 40 below and I'm in that sleeping bag and my alarm goes off and I don't want to get out of that sleeping bag. It's the same principle. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, get up. And so I literally count down in my head and I sit straight up. You can't give yourself an option because your mind will play tricks on you over and over and over. So I don't allow myself to get down that route. I have to just move. And if I don't take that step, it's not going to happen. So there's a lot of mental aspect of dog mushing and life that are very parallel. And so some sense I've been fortunate enough to experience some pretty terrible things that I've continued to stand on the other side of, but each one of them has and will make you stronger if you allow it to, and allow yourself to be fearful and work in that fear. It'll take you places that you can't imagine.
So if our audience has found this interesting, inspiring, thought-provoking, I encourage you to keep your eyes open, because Bridgett is writing a book, and I'm sure that part of what you just heard that was truly inspirational and a real tool, to Robin's point, that anyone could use, I'm sure that will be in their book. So keep your eyes open. And Bridgett, thank you so very much for joining us today. It was fantastic. I really appreciate it. Robin, what do you think?
Thank you so much for inspiring everyone today. And we just wish you the very, very best through this season as you're kicking off. You're getting ready to start your hardcore training season for the next year.
Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. And with that, I will say, mush. Thanks for joining us for A View from the Summit. This program is made possible by Summit Animal Health. Check them out online at summitanimals.com. Thanks for joining us again, and we'll see you next week for another View from the Summit.